Well, just wanted to say it was such a privilege to hear Benjamin speak, and I've told many people about it, and it generated a lot of thought-provoking ideas for me. And I just want to introduce Benjamin Surmi. He is a Koelsch Foundation employee and goes from facility to facility doing different talks. And he is a profession that I had never heard of before. Benjamin is a social gerontologist. Now you guys look it up. Benjamin, it's on you.
Terry. It's a pleasure to be with you today. It sounds like you got a great group here that's doing all kinds of neat things, learning things together.
Oh, look at your shoes. Those are great.
Yeah, I like those shoes.
Thank you.
Like
Thank you.
Spats.
Am I echoing too much, or is it coming out okay? Am I getting feedback? Are we all right? Okay. So I definitely warn you to listen to a 45-year-old talk about retirement. That's not always the best thing. Don't go to, we always got to be careful with the next expert who writes a blog on some, magical pills or magical formula for having the best life, right? Everybody's always trying to sell something. And so I'm here as a social gerontologist, not because I've done all this, but I am preparing myself for my own next adventure as I hit 55, 65, 70. And then also as a researcher, right? As someone who researches these things and develops programs, develops products, develops amenities, services for the next generation, the generation that is in their next adventure. I'm looking at these things. So I'm just sharing some things I've learned, but I in no way pretend to be an expert in exactly what I'm talking about. I'm a researcher into these things. And so the point of my talk today is what this talk is about is really about inspiring all of us, because many of us have inherited a view of aging that is not a very positive view. And so we're gonna try to be inspired a little bit on what the research actually says, and also some people who have shown us some really amazing ways that they used their second half of life. So I'd like to start by just giving a preview of what we're gonna go together. How to use this thing. Okay. There we go. All right. So we're going to look at some aging myths together. Then we're going to look at specific research regarding perspective, our perspective as we age, purpose, what part does purpose play from a research perspective on us as we age, and then people. How do people impact that? We're going to look at some people living well after the age of 70. We're going to look at some new models of empowering us as we age, so business models that are taking on this project of how do we age really well. We're going to look at some aging in place myths, and then we're going to do a little exercise, if we have time, where we're going to look at how our culture looks at this in a positive view through some commercials, as well as a little exercise that you've all been handed out. So that's a lot because this would be like a 3-hour workshop, so I'm going to have to go fairly quickly. So do raise your hand if I'm going too fast and just say slow down. So the first myth we're going to look at is the myth of dementia is a normal part of aging. Many, many people believe this. In fact, some research in 2019 showed that in interviewing 70,000 people across the globe, 2/3 of the world population still believe that this is true. So most people believe that if I get old, my brain is not going to work very well, and I'm not going to be able to handle life. The fact is, dementia is actually a collection of symptoms that occur due to 100 different disease processes. They're not normal part of aging. They're an abnormal part of aging. None of these symptoms are a normal part of aging. And so it's important for us to understand that aging is totally separate from dementia. They do happen to go together because we have more of a lifetime to encounter these disease processes. We have more of a lifetime to be exposed to toxic substances or to get mold in our food and in our surroundings or to potentially see certain DNA genetic markers actually play out in our life. But it is not a guarantee that as we age, we will get dementia. In fact, there's a lot of research showing different things that seem to protect us from dementia, and we'll get into some of that. The second myth is older adults don't learn new skills. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? The fact is, we grow until we no longer breathe. I think most of us believe that. We know that. But our culture has often taught us, hey, you might learn Facebook, but you're not going to learn any of this other technology. Or, you're never going to get a job after 50 because nobody wants to pay you because, you got old skills, right? We've heard that for decades. And so many older people walk into their next half of life thinking, well, I did that 20 years ago. I guess that's what I got to do today. Now, for some people, that's good news because they didn't get to do it 20 years ago. They always wanted to do that quilting. Now they finally get a chance to do it. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is this idea that I can't learn something new. The reality is a study in 2014 showed that older adults who invested about, I think it was 6 weeks, learning a new skill. So in this case, it was digital photography or quilting. They learned a new skill, and they experienced improvement in their overall cognition. So their whole brain and all the different aspects of their brain actually worked better for a period of time after they took those 6 weeks of learning a new skill. So the research did point out that it was very clear that it was about learning a new skill, not just taking on more knowledge. So it's not just reading a book about history. It was learning something that you would actually do. And that process impacted those people in that study. Other research shows that we actually grow in certain aspects of intelligence. So there's this idea of fluid intelligence, which we peak at, I think, around 30, 35. And that's the kind of intelligence that helps someone create a Facebook or create Google, right? You're doing something totally new that nobody's ever thought of. That fluid intelligence grows and peaks early in life. But crystallized intelligence peaks later in life. And that's the kind of intelligence related to being able to see patterns, to be able to see how all these different things fit together. And as we get older, that intelligence starts to peak. And so that's an example of a type of intelligence that actually grows as we get older. We're able to see things other people can't see because we've lived longer, experienced more, have more knowledge, have more life experience, have more experience in the data, if we're working with data, to be able to see things other people can't see. The third is life is lived in 3 stages: education, family and work, and then retirement. That used to be true, but the fact, sorry, it's not going, there we go. The fact is, life is not so simple. It's not these 3 neat stages anymore. Maybe for some in this room, maybe that really describes your life, because for quite a, let's see, probably since the 50s, this was probably true, right? But now we're seeing it become a cycle. We're seeing people go to school, and then they'll work for a period of time or raise a family. They'll go back to school. They'll take mini retirements. They'll do a 6-month retirement, a year retirement. They'll travel. They'll do something they've always wanted to do. They'll go back, retool in a new career or a new education, and then they'll take another mini retirement. And then, so we're seeing retirement change completely. It's not necessarily the way it always was, 3 distinct phases of life, but people reinventing themselves multiple times, taking a break to do something they really want to do, but then getting back into something that produces income or some sort of volunteer work that's really meaningful to them. And so the thing that I think is important in understanding this cyclical stage is now a reality. It's not the reality for everybody, but it is a reality that human beings, especially in the more developed nations, are experiencing. is it opens up opportunities for each of us to think about, oh, did I map out my life just because my culture told me that was my life? Or did I actually want to live that way? And so it just opens up opportunities for us to think about and ask ourselves questions. Am I doing what I really want to do right now? And maybe the answer is yes, and that's great. But maybe the answer is, oh, there's actually something else I wanted to try. The next myth is 65 is old. We're now moving into a world where we actually have 3 stages of old. The first is 40 to 60 years old, so I'm in this stage. It's called middlescence. The second is late adulthood, which is 60 to 80 years old, and then old age is 80 plus. So, again, some of us grew up in a period of time where we knew we were old as soon as AARP gave us that discount card. That was the date. We remember it, we framed it, and it is there. We hid it away and we burned it. Either way. But we just realized that age is a lot more fluid than maybe it was 50 years ago. People age at different speeds. Their body ages at different speeds. Their minds age at different speeds. Their careers are very different. You know, what you can do in one career versus another, very different. And so again, we have to start realizing that some of these myths we believe may have shaped our decisions or shaped what's right now, but the world is changing radically as human beings change. And then the last myth I'll talk about is aging is inevitable. Yes, we do all grow older. However, how we age is deeply impacted by what we believe it means to be an old person. And that's the study that's what I'm going to talk to you next about. Is how important how we think about old age actually impacts how we age. So the reason I say this is a myth, the reason I say aging is inevitable is a myth, is because our aging absolutely changes based on what we believe about aging, the people around us as we age, and the purpose that we have as we age. So let's look at some actual research to back this up. So the first study I'm going to show you is related to this impact of perspective on our lives. So this was a Yale research study, 2002. It studied 660 adults over the age of 50 for 22 years of their life. What they discovered was that people with a positive vision for aging lived on average 7.5 years longer than people with a negative perspective of aging. Think wise versus senile. If you think of an 80-year-old and you think senile, that's a negative perspective of aging. If you think of an 80-year-old and your mind says wise, that's a positive perspective on aging. People who had the positive perspective, people who thought positive thoughts, like wise and witty and creative, those people actually lived 7.5 years longer than their peers who thought of negative things like disability, decrepitness, senility, right? Those who thought those thoughts lived a shorter life. This is a greater difference than managing your blood pressure. Thank you, blood pressure folks, for doing the blood pressure fair, but I got to tell you, we probably need to do a perspective check with older people, not just blood pressure checks, because this has a bigger impact on your life than getting good blood pressure. It's a greater impact on your longevity than a healthy weight, low cholesterol, exercise, and not smoking. None of those things can give you the kind of impact, according to this study, that understanding aging and seeing it differently does. Next study. This is a more recent study. This was 2022, and it was 20 years of studying 14,000 adults over the age of 50. So a more recent study, almost as long as the last study, and way more people that they studied, 14,000 people. What they discovered, that people who were satisfied with aging, so they actually enjoyed the aging experience, 43% lower risk of dying during the 4 years after the study. They had reduced risk for diabetes and stroke and cancer and heart disease, better mind function. They were more likely to exercise, had less trouble sleeping, less lonely, not as depressed, more optimistic, and more purposeful. So you start to begin to see in the research this indication that it's not just frou-frou new age thinking here, like, oh, if I think, I'll do better, right? That's not the point. The point is not just you change your mind, change your life kind of thing. It seems like people who have a better aging experience are also making different choices, right? They're managing that blood pressure. They're dealing with exercise. They're looking for a way to live a purposeful life. But it's making a difference. Their experience of aging changed their aging outcome. Next study, 2023, again, more recent study. This one is 14 years, a study of 1,716 adults in their 70s and their 80s. This was a Yale University study. And they asked people how strongly they disagreed with statements like, the older I get, the more useless I feel. So they asked people, do you disagree or agree with that statement? Most people, now let me back up. How many of you are familiar with mild cognitive impairment, MCI? Okay, for those that don't, that's kind of like a precursor to dementia. There's less symptoms, so a doctor won't diagnose you with dementia, but you're starting to show some symptoms of the brain changing, the brain not being able to handle life as well. So it's a precursor to dementia. Most people assume that if you have MCI, you cannot recover, because it's rare to recover from dementia. So we assume that you can't recover from mild cognitive impairment. But at least half of people diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment do recover. The researchers wanted to know how much positive age beliefs impacted recovery from mild cognitive impairment. So if the doctor says, I'm sorry, I just diagnosed you, you've got the early stages of dementia, we call it mild cognitive impairment. The researchers wanted to know, okay, if the person had a positive view of aging, did they recover any faster? What they found out was that the people who had positive age beliefs were 30% more likely to recover from a diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment. And they recovered faster by 2 years. So they got back to their baseline 2 years faster than their peers who had a negative view of aging. And those without MCI were less likely to develop it in the first place over the next 12 years of their life. Now, that's pretty impressive. Now, there are confounding factors, of course, if you have Alzheimer's, depression, physiological factors, your nutrition's really bad. Just having a positive view of aging didn't help those people as much as it helped people who were healthier, but you could see a difference. The next study is 2009. It's a 39-year study of 440 adults over their entire life. If you held negative beliefs earlier in life, you were more likely to experience a heart attack or a stroke, even more than 20 years later when you had been studied with those negative beliefs. So this study really went into how important positive aging was even on heart health. Right? Most of us grew up thinking, okay, if I'm going to take care of my heart, that means I need to eat Wheaties and non-fat milk, right? That's what we heard, right? But this is sharing with us that how we see aging made a massive difference. Now, this study is a shorter study, but it deals with, okay, if we now see there's evidence that how I see myself as I age and how I see other people, if that really makes a difference, is there anything I can do about that? Like, if I have a negative view today, could I change that? Would it make a difference? How could I change my beliefs? So this study, their intervention was a little odd, and I don't think most of us would want to do this. But what they did is they put seniors in front, and by the way, the average senior was 81 years old that they studied. So they put 81-year-olds in front of a computer game or a TV. And they just were watching a TV show, just a normal TV show or a normal computer game. But it would flicker these words across the screen that they couldn't see. And the words were words that were very positive words about aging. And what they found is that people who were exposed to this subliminal messaging for just 4 weeks had that intervention had a greater impact on their physical function than 6 months of exercise. 4 weeks of not even knowing that you were getting a message about positive aging had a bigger impact on their body than 6 weeks of 6 months of exercising.
So if we could sign up for subliminal, would it need to exercise?
I'm not going to say that, Terry, but that certainly is one implication of that study, yes. Okay, now let's move on to purpose. So we've established that maybe we need to rethink aging a little bit. Because if we're waking up every day going, oh no, I'm almost 70, it's going to be bad, right? It may not be good for our heart health. Now let's look at the impact of purpose. So when I say purpose, I mean, do we have a purpose? Do we get up each morning going, I got something to do? Or is it, oh boy, it's raining again, I'm going back to bed? Do we have purpose in life? So let's see what some of the research says here. 4 years, almost 7,000 adults, most were 50 plus, everybody was 50 and older. Over 4 years, people with a higher sense of purpose were less likely to die, and they were especially less likely to die from heart, circulatory, and blood conditions. Again, we see that heart health directly related to things like purpose and perspective. 12-year study of almost 11,000 adults. This was in 2023. It's a very recent study. People with purpose had a lower risk of developing that precursor to dementia we talked about. They had a higher likelihood of cognitive improvement, and they had a longer cognitive healthy life. In other words, they had purpose, they lived longer with their brain working, right? Their peers without purpose, maybe they lived just as long, but their brain stopped working as well, and they were in a memory care, or they, had a lot of problems because their brain wasn't working very well. So purpose made a difference in how long people could live with their brain being at their side to help them through life. So those are just a couple studies on purpose. Now let's think about people. How much does the impact of being surrounded by people like this in this room, how does that make a difference on our life? So in 2010, there was an analysis of 148 research studies. And what these research studies showed, if you look at all of them together, they showed that you had a 50% higher likelihood of living longer than your peers if you had strong versus weak relationships. They also showed that loneliness is equal to 15 cigarettes a day. That's a U.S. Surgeon General warning. 15 cigarettes a day or loneliness. Pick your poison. Which one do you want? U.S. Surgeon General 2023 showed us that we have a greater risk of early death, heart disease, and stroke with loneliness and social isolation. You also have a greater chance of anxiety, depression, dementia, viruses, and respiratory illness by being lonely or socially isolated. 20-year study, 2,570 men in Finland in 2021 showed an increased likelihood of cancer, with the one difference between the two populations being loneliness. ARP did a study in 2008 that showed women with a large social network had a 26% reduction in their risk of getting dementia. Women with a large social network, basically 1/4 less risk of getting dementia. Women who had daily contact with friends and family, almost half. They halved their risk of dementia in half. There's no drug you're going to buy that's going to give you that kind of protection from dementia. Absolutely no drug. I haven't even seen any exercise that will get you that kind of reduction in risk, except for dancing. Social dancing, I think, is some studies show like a 90% risk reduction in social dancing. But I assume that's partly because it's social. It's not just exercising in a gym by yourself. It's a social experience. Okay, so we've talked about perspective, purpose, people being really foundational to what the next half of our life can look like. I want to just look at a few people who 70 and older who use the second half of life for some cool things. Does anybody know who this person is? I'll give you a clue if you don't. Probably didn't meet him because he lived a long time ago. But he's probably why we all spell things the same way today. Webster. Noah Webster. Yes, he was 70 years old when he finished the dictionary. I don't know if these guys are friends, but their books are on the shelf next to one another. Yes. Anybody know his name? Roget, yes. He invented the thesaurus at the age of 73. At 75, this man was elected president. Who is this? This woman started painting at 76. Grandma Moses. This person went to space at 77 years old. This person signed the Constitution at 81. This person campaigned for peace during Vietnam at the age of 83. Dr. Spock, Benjamin Spock, the child doctor, what do you call that? A pediatrician that really impacted the pediatric world. This woman, not very famous, probably don't know her. She was 89 years old when she reached the North Pole. Her name is Dorothy Davenhill Hirsch. This is Nola Ox at 95. She is graduating from college. This man, named Taichi Igarashi, climbed Mount Fuji at the age of 100. A few other people I didn't have pictures for. A person named Masako at 84 created her first iPhone app and became one of the world's oldest app developers. At 85, Ingeborg Rappaport completed her PhD thesis 80 years after she started her PhD. She finally finished her thesis at 85, although that can't quite be right because she was 85, so I think that maybe it was 60 years. She was denied her degree by the Nazis in the 1930s for being Jewish. At 102, At 102, she became the oldest person to receive a doctoral degree. At 87, Carmen Herrera sold her first painting after decades of creating in obscurity. She got her first solo exhibition at 94. A gentleman named Conrad, 86, invented a soy-based sausage substitute and held multiple patents for his soy-based sausage. And a woman named Johanna at 88 became a viral YouTube star through her yoga and gymnastics. Okay, so a few quick question before we move on here is, let me see here, okay. A quick question, who is someone in your own life who's been a role model to you of positive aging? You think of anybody, it could be a family member, it could be a star, it could be a famous person, just a person you met. Can you think of anybody who you look and go, if I could age well, I'd like to age like that person? Just shout it out. Who's someone?
Mother.
Your mother.
Mother.
Okay?
7 sisters of my dad's.
7 sisters of your dad's that you look at and go, they did it right. Dick Van Dyke. Still dancing. Yes. Anyone else? Who's someone your father-in-law?
One of my patients when I did home care.
Okay. Your wife's mother. Well, mother-in-law. That's a good testimony. A lot of sons wouldn't say that.
I have a 104-year-old friend in my dance class.
Oh my goodness. Wow. What kind of dance class is this? Line dancing. Oh my gosh. That's awesome. I love that. All right. A few areas that older people make a big contribution in our society. There's many of them, but a couple are in nonprofit leadership. Many boards are still run by older adults, right? They are running our hospitals and our nonprofits that help so many different areas of life. Business owners. Did you know over half of all small business owners are over 50 years old? Over half. All small business owners. And we know small businesses make this country run. Like they employ more people than the big companies, right? Startups, new businesses. The older people are growing as far as being the ones who start new businesses. In 1996, it was just about 14% of all new businesses were started by an older person. In 2018, the number had grown to 26%. So almost 1/4 of all new businesses are started by an older adult. Philanthropy, over 70% of giving in the United States is from people born before 1964. So over 70% of the philanthropy, the giving that keeps this country running, people before 1964 are giving that money. And 1 in 3 volunteers is over 55. And that doesn't even begin to talk about grandparenting, mentoring, cultural preservation, sports, art, literature. There's so many ways older people are impacting our world. Now, these are just a few businesses that I think are interesting because they're understanding what we're talking about, and they're saying, we're going to do a business in this area. So Co-Generate, what they do is they bring younger people and older people together to solve big problems in the world, solving hunger, solving, no water in Africa for people that's clean. They'll work together. They'll bring older and younger people together because they feel like the older people have incredible wisdom and talent and skill, and these younger people maybe have, let's say, energy, drive, and time or something to do it, and they'll bring them together and create solutions. Bloom, they develop a personalized life plan for retirement in 3-week coaching program for seniors. So I'm not advocating for these businesses, but my point is there's enough people who are saying, I'm 65, I'm 70, and I've got decades left. What am I going to do with it? So they go into programs like these where they get coaching and in 3 weeks develop a plan for how they're going to use that next half of life. Get Set Up is a very popular platform. How many of you have used Get Set Up? It's one of the biggest platforms for older adults in the world. I think they have over 4 million users, and it is older adults teaching older adults all kinds of skills. They just have so many people around the world on this platform. It's called Get Set Up. Live classes for older adults by older adults. Join over 4 million older adults learning something new every day and live your best life. That's their tagline. Aldera is an organization that connects 5-year-old to 18-year-old kids with vetted older mentors, 60 and older, for weekly virtual conversations and activities. So they're pairing these older adults and these younger people over Zoom so that these kids who may have never met an older person in their life have at least one older person that is speaking into their life in some way. Many of you have heard of Osher. It's the Lifelong Learning Institute. It is for people over 50. They have over 125 university-based branches across the U.S. funded by this organization. And Rhodes Scholar, they are an organization that was formerly called Elder Hostel. They're a nonprofit. They've been around since 1975. 6 million people, most of them over 72, go on trips around the world learning as they go on these trips. And then Catch a Fire. Catch a Fire is an organization that finds not just older people, but often there'll be older people, connects older people who have a lifetime of skill in a particular area with a very specific nonprofit that needs those skills. And they come up with a contract where the older person offers 10 hours of their advice with that nonprofit, or 60 hours or 30 hours. So very different type of volunteering, Many people, when they think of volunteering, they think of the soup kitchen line, or they think of something like that. There's a very different type of volunteering. It's free to the person who wants to volunteer. They just go on and they look for different nonprofits that might need the skill that they spent 30, 40 years developing in their career. But this nonprofit, there's no way they can pay someone with those skills to come in and do that. And so they get a volunteer who does just that one project. They don't have to show up every week. They don't have to come to meetings. They just do the one project that's needed. So anyway, really cool organizations that I think are, helping us see that what we're talking about is not just in the research books. People in the business world are saying, oh, there's an opportunity to support the population in this arena. Okay, a few age-in-place myths, real quick. In my industry as a social gerontologist, we work. We've been working for decades now in the United States, in the UK, et cetera, Canada, on age-in-place plans. How do we make sure that when seniors are getting older and more frail, that they don't have to move to a nursing home, that they can be wherever they call home, right? That's the idea. Now, over time, that's a really good plan, right? I think we would all agree that our policies, our funding at the federal level should empower older people to live where they call home. The problem with the movement over time is that for many people, they start to think that aging in place equals a house. And they think that is, and many government agencies and bills and regulations are all starting to go in that direction to some degree. But I think based on what we've learned today, we need to understand that aging in place is actually about thriving. So what I mean by this is, as you're making your plans, as I'm making my plans should not be about a particular house. My plan should be everything we talked about earlier. I want my plan for how I age to help me be purposeful, to help me age well in a way that inspires me, and to be around people that I care about and that care about me. That's most important. Just being in a particular house may actually work against all of your goals. So I counsel people all over the country who ask for help as they're making plans for their 90-year-old mother who's just fallen and they need help. And so many of these older people that I'm counseling didn't ever think about those things. And so then they get stuck somewhere that's away from all their family, away from all their friends, their pet can't live with them, or they're stuck in their own home and they're taking care of an elder, and that elder is miserable because she's alone all day. I remember walking into one man's house in this city. He was so proud he was doing this aging in place. I'm staying in my house. And he had his wife looking so ugly. He was her caregiver. He didn't know how to do her hair. He didn't know how to do anything. She was in a nightgown all day long watching Judge Judy, all day long. And that woman had a very vivacious life, and she was a beautiful woman, and she could have made so many friends if he had just made sure he had a plan for her to keep being with some of her friends and to get the help she needed, rather than being proud that I'm staying in this building, right? The next myth is house is the priority, right? Well, no, the fact is living a purposeful life is the priority. And so the plans that we make need to be about our purpose. Right? If my purpose is I need to be there for my grandchildren, then my plan needs to be I need to be near my grandchildren. If my purpose is I want to garden, gardening is very important to me, I want to be in nature, then I better not move somewhere where there's no gardens and I'm stuck inside a cement slab, right? Like what matters about aging in place is, am I aging in a space and with people where I can do what really matters to me? That's the most important thing. And all the plans should revolve around that. Aging in place equals independence. Okay, yeah, we all want independence, but the reality is not always true. If I adopt the age in place mentality of many social service agencies, where they're going to say, hey, we're going to do whatever it takes to help you stay in your apartment where you are right now, the reality is I may end up becoming way less independent because now I am dependent on a fragmented social system or on transportation that is constantly late and I can't get where I want to go, or I may be able to get medical transportation but no transportation to my church. Like, we have to always keep in mind that what matters is not, again, that I can stay in my home, whatever that is, but that I can truly get where I want to go and be with the people I want to be with. Like, that's what matters most. So we need to choose those goals so that we can pick the services that will help us achieve those goals. Aging in place equals community. In other words, if I stay in my house that I've lived in for 40 years, that means I'm going to keep my friends. Well, many of you probably have seen that's not true, right? Many of our friends move away, families take them away, we stop driving, and now we're all alone watching Judge Judy all day in our house. And so the fact is, not always, right? We have to pick a plan that helps us be with people. And the last myth is we only have two choices, home or nursing home. That's not true. We actually have lots of choices now. And I'm going to read this list to you. You won't understand every word I say, but in America, we're very lucky. We have lots of choices. We now have active adult communities. These are like the Leisure Worlds and the Sun Cities of the world, where you have thousands of older people who move into these active adult communities. We have independent living communities, which are communities where people can get food and transportation and activities and housekeeping and maintenance, but they're still completely on their own. They have assisted living, where you're getting all those plus caregivers. You have memory care, which helps you if you have memory issues. You have adult family homes, which are private residential homes in our city. We have 400 in Clark County that let you get taken care of with maybe 5 other people in a residential home. We have co-housing, which is a big movement in the United States now, where older people are coming together and they're developing their own housing model together. 10 people get together and say, hey, we're going to live together and we're all going to help each other as we age. You got these co-housing models developing. You also have companies like Nesterly and Silvernest. These are online companies that match seniors with other seniors who want to share a house together, or seniors with a college student, where the college student's going to do some work around the house in return for lower rent in renting a place, and they're background checking everybody. You have intentional communities where people are choosing to live together more intentionally rather than just sharing an apartment. And then you have some companies that are trying to take regular apartments that you can move into and have transportation and housekeeping and private chefs, etc. And then here in Portland, we have the Village movement, which is around the world as well, where these nonprofits will adopt a specific neighborhood, and the people in the neighborhood pay a membership fee, and then they can pay for, just by paying for that membership fee, they can call a phone number, and they'll send a volunteer to help them with anything that they need around the house. So there's all kinds of movements now around the United States, and my point with that is just, in the old days, it was two choices. In the 1920s, it was home or poorhouse. In the 1960s, it was home or nursing home. You had your choice. Now we have lots of choices. My point is, you want to make those choices based on your goals, what matters to you in life. Now, I guess I had a list of all those places. Lots of opportunities. I need to change that to 2026, not 2024. Okay, so I'm ending that section, moving into a new section. This section, I want to we've seen a lot of bad things in movies and culture, advertisements, etc., that paint a very poor picture of aging, right? They paint a picture, you've all seen the movies where all the older people in the movie seem kind of silly, not quite with it in the head, or their bodies are broken down, etc. You've seen commercials that drive fear into you, right? Like, if you don't buy this product, you're going to die too, right? We've all seen the fear-based marketing and everything. So I wanted to show us some examples of some positive artifacts of culture through the advertising world, because the advertising world really impacts us. Like, many of us have our ideas about who we want to marry based on commercials we saw when we were kids, right? Which is crazy that our whole ideas of religion and romance and work, so many of them come from commercials. But I want to show you a few. We'll talk about it.
Paddle 8 miles.
Relive my glory days.
Feel young again.
I'm taking the first step.
It's my time
To take charge.
To find out what I'm made of.
If you're ready for a change, Cox Health can help you start.
Because I can.
Because I can. And you can too.
Couché à Paris. Peut-être, peut-être. Voilà. Viens, 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 donne-lui. Cheese. Empieza algo nuevo.
English for beginners. I am, you are, he, she, it is. I am, you are, he, she, it is. Robert, I am. Hi. Can you show me the way to the beach? Towel. Breakfast.
Fork. Knife. Bread.
I love you. You are perfect.
I'm gonna fucking kill you.
I'm gonna fucking kill you. I love you. You are perfect.
I thank you.
Suitcase, slippers, toothbrush, passport, pajamas. Be good dog. Hi, I am. Hi, I am.
Passengers on flight Aerolíneas Argentina.
Hi. I am your grandpa.
Okay, those were 3 commercials, all focused on older people and purpose. What did you notice? They're long. They are long commercials. What did you notice? Change. Say more, what do you mean?
Change from a lonely life.
Okay.
Venturing, first one step and then
Yes.
step. Going further and further.
Like the man with the chair.
The chair,
Just one little step at a time. Uh-huh.
Getting out of your routine.
Getting out of your routine, yeah. Learning. Although he wasn't just learning to learn, was he?
No.
He had a very clear purpose. Enthusiastic, yes. What else did you notice? Persistent. Yes, there was a lot of persistence, wasn't there? Yeah. And the other things you thought about?
need for people.
Need for people, yeah. Yeah.
Also that you can be an influence to others.
Yes, yes. I saw that in that older man with the chair, right? He started getting other people thinking too. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And they were all independent cusses. I can relate to that.
I loved how he exemplified the research we read earlier. You saw him give up his cane, right? His body was changing as his mind started to change. And it wasn't all at once though, right? It was just little tiny steps. I think you said that right? Little tiny steps, and the brain started to change, and how he thought about life started to change. We have a few more if we have time, but I want us to look at this green piece of paper real quick. So we're not going to be able to do this together, but I'm going to walk you through how this works in case you want to do that. Yeah. Yeah.
His acceptance of his family because there was color. He visited his family. There were colored people, part of his.
Yes.
Not colored, but
Right, yeah.
the nationality.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was really good.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's 3 steps, and the idea here is in case you're not very clear. Some of you may be very clear. These are the 3 things I care about. This is what I want to be doing in my life. This is what makes my life tick. And when I'm 95 and in a wheelchair one day, these are going to be part of my life, and this is how. Like some of you may be very clear on that. Others of you may not be. You may be taking one day at a time, right? Or confused about what exactly am I doing here? Or maybe you're doing some things right now, but we haven't thought about 20 years from now. This really matters to me. I don't want to be without that. So this is just an exercise that could help any of us get a little bit more clarity, because I can tell you, after working with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of families, maybe 2 families have thought through this, right? I mean, most people, as they move into the next stage of life, especially when disability becomes part of life, have not thought about any of this at all. They're only thinking about safety. They're only thinking about how can I make sure I get a bath? How can I make sure I get food? How can I make sure that I get my medication? That's all they're thinking about. And yet, this is the most important part of their entire life. But all they're thinking about is their pills and making sure that there's food on the table today. And those things are important. We got to think about them. But it's important to think about them and achieve those other things while making sure we have what matters most to us. So on the first page, you see 7 different relationships we all have, right? We each have a relationship with music of some sort. Some of us may hate music, but we probably have some sort of connection to rhythm or sounds or something. Maybe it's white noise for someone who hates music. But most of us have something, some kind of connection to music, rhythm, bands, singers, genres, etc. Another relationship many of us have is with beauty or art. And it could be architecture, fine art, comics, theater, dance, photography, sewing, woodworking, appreciation of beauty, like lots of ways that we connect with beauty and art. Family and friends, including pets, memories of important people who have passed, new relationships, deep conversations. Living well in nature refers to our relationship with nature. Gardening, exploring, breathtaking vistas, horticulture, animals, landscaping, wilding, forest bathing. Living well in spirit refers to faith, religion, virtue, inspiration, spiritual practices, and community. Living well in community, service, volunteering, travel, causes, civic engagement, nonprofit work, entrepreneurial projects, ethnic and cultural groups. And then living well in mind and body, reading, writing, physical fitness and nutrition, brain fitness, and rest. So if you were doing this exercise, what I would commend you to do, circle 3 things in this list. They're like, that's really important to me. Like if I had my whole life change tomorrow, I would not want to give those 3 things up. Those really matter to me. Okay, so that's what we would be thinking about first. So if we had more time, what I would ask you all to do is actually discuss 2 or 3 of those relationships. Like talk about how does this love of, maybe you were a nurse throughout your life, like the love of being of service to people in a way that's tangible. How does that impact your whole life? Is that a big part of your identity, a big part of who you are? Do you want to continue making an impact in other people's lives? Maybe gardening is really important to you, and so you talk about, well, I love being out with the trees, and I love seeing the little animals, and I don't really care if they can grow or not, but all I care about is just being out there, having my hands in the dirt or whatever, right? Those are important discussions to have. Like, why do I care about these 3 things? What is it that really matters to me? Then on the next page, we have step 2. And that is where you get a little bit more specific. So let's take for simplicity's sake, let's take the example of the gardening. I would like to, and then you circle one of the first words. I would like to learn, do, enjoy, or share. So maybe for this particular person, it's I would like to learn more gardening skills. Or I would like to do vegetable gardening. I would like to do flower gardening. I would like to do gardening in which I create flower bouquets, right? Whatever. Or it could be, I would like to enjoy gardening where there's no rain 6 months of the year, right? Like maybe that's what they write. I would like to share my love of gardening. I would like to share the fruit from my garden, right? So that's the first step, is I want to do what? I want to enjoy or share. And then the next step is with, to, for, or so that. So then you say, okay, I want to learn more gardening so that I can win first prize at the county fair. I want to enjoy gardening with my oldest grandchild. I want to share what I've learned about gardening with my son who's starting his own garden, right? That's what this page is for. It's just getting a little bit more specific on this is what I care about, this is what I want to do, and then here's why I want to do it or who I want to do it with. And the reason those are very important is as we move to step 3, you now ask some really tough questions. You ask, okay, who would I want or need to be around to achieve these goals? I think I was in a workshop like this, and one woman, hers was, I want to travel. I want to see new countries. I want to do that. And so she had to ask hard questions around, okay, who do I want to need or want to be around to achieve those goals? Because if she's in a setting where no one else is traveling and everyone else is expecting her to be at every meeting or be a part of the clubs, and there's no room for people who like to travel and be gone 6 months of the year, that social setting is going to be really hard for her. Or another person in a workshop, I think they really wanted to learn new language, right? So their question is, okay, who's going to actually encourage me to do that? Who's going to ask me in the morning, hey, did you learn 2 new words yesterday, right? Who do I need to be around to make sure I actually do what I just said I want to do? Who's going to help me get to those goals? Because for many of us, we're around people that pull us back, right? We say, okay, New Year's, I'm going to lose 20 pounds, right? But then we're with friends who bring us boxes of See's candy. I was just with my grandma this last 2 weeks, and her best friend had taken her home before I got to her house to sleep at that other house because she didn't want all my kids around, keeping her up at night. But she ended up coming back halfway with her feet swelling and walking like this. He was feeding her boxes of See's candy, and she's got congestive heart failure, and she's on, blood thinners and all this stuff. And so who you choose to be your friends can make a big difference in your life, right? Where would I need to be to really go after this next adventure? That's the second question. Where do I need to be? Right? If the question is, I want to be gardening with my oldest grandchild, and I'm 4 states away, my aging in place plan of living in my house is actually working in direct contradiction to my goal in my life, right? If I want to travel, but I have a big house, and I got 4 pets, and I got this and that, and maybe living at home alone is not going to work for me because I need to be somewhere where I can turn off the lights and someone else is going to take care of the place. It's some sort of managed apartment situation, right? If I'm someone who really needs to be outside and walking my dog, and I go move into a high-rise where there's nothing but streets, then I have just gone in direct contradiction to the things that matter most to me. And so that second question is very important. Third question is, what strategies or supports would help me? So, I've worked with people who have various disabilities, right? And their desire may be, I want to be painting, or I want to be doing some sort of dancing, right? But how do I do that with my ability? Well, there are often ways to do it, but we need to think about that, right? When we have a goal, we may not always see exactly how to get there. And so talking with people like myself or others who work with older people and can maybe suggest solutions or strategies can be helpful. Other friends can be helpful in developing strategies with you, or you may have your own. But that third question is important for, I may have a goal, but I may feel like, there's no way I can get there. Like, I can't drive. And my goal is to volunteer at the hospital, right? That's a strategy or support is, okay, I'm going to start learning how to use Lyft. I'm going to learn how to use Uber, or I'm going to sign up for the free dollar ride with my county for $3, right? Whatever the case is, that we need sometimes some strategies and supports. So that is called the Next Adventure Design. The idea is just a very simple exercise where you're identifying what matters most to you, you're getting a little bit more specific about what you want to do, who you want to do it with, or why you want to do it, and then you're asking a few tough questions around, okay, how can I make sure I keep doing that? I don't have to give that up when my family comes to me and says, okay, Mom, car's going away, you're moving, da-da-da-da-da. And now the whole decision becomes, how big of a place do I need? And where can I put my stuff? And is it on the second floor or the first floor? And do I like the food or not? Like, all the questions. That's all people talk about. Rarely has anyone in the 1,000 people I've counseled or so talked about what mattered most to them. They didn't even bring it up. So I'm just encouraging us all to do that. Any questions before I get you out of here right on time? Yes, Ron.
Yeah, I have several friends that spend a lot of time in front of the TV watching news.
Are they happy people?
For the most part, yeah. But when we go on vacation with them, we spend a lot of time standing around watching news.
Oh, gosh.
And I'm just wondering how the, negativity. How does the negativity on the news affect your everyday life? Does it do you any good to know what the heck is going on? And how can we change the news from downer to upper?
That's an excellent question. My pushback a little bit here would be, this goes back to that question we had, the first question on the back page. Who do you need to be around in order to accomplish your goals? right? You're not necessarily going to change your friends. And so if you're starting to identify a pattern that you go on vacation and you want to golf and you want to actually explore, you want to get out to the museums, and you're finding that half your vacation is in front of CNN or Fox, depending on your friends, you may need to think about either setting a different expectation with your friends, like, hey, we're going on this trip, we're going to be with you at dinner, and we're going to see you for brunch. But I've got plans the rest of the time. And I've actually brought another friend who's going to go with me on museums. So that may be hard to do. I don't know your social situation. That can be very challenging to do. My family was just 3 weeks in San Diego with family, and we experienced some of the same kind of thing. It wasn't around news, but it was around a lot of, like, we're an active family. We like to hike. We like to run. We like to go places. We like to explore. And we were with people who just wanted to eat all day, right? So we're thinking next year how we're going to plan this trip so we can see them, but we're going to go do the things that, like, really fill our cup and really help us be healthy people. So that would be one answer, just picking who we're with. I think there are some interesting examples of people who are leaning into kind of more positive journalism, right? Leaning into journalism that gets people telling stories. I'm trying to remember one YouTube channel I think is really interesting. I think it's called 91 Huntley Street. I think it's called. And it's just all kinds of positive stories of people telling how their life was changed or impacted. You know, a mafia person who's no longer in the mafia, and this person who, this situation, that situation. And there are examples. It may be hard to get friends to watch those things. But I do think that's why that first question is so important, is who we surround ourselves with will absolutely impact our own choices. Any other questions? Thoughts? Yes?
Is there an average age when people stop driving their cars?
Some people in this room are going to say, there should be. Other people in this room are going to say, there better ever not be, right? I don't know. That's a really good research point that I don't know the data on. As a social gerontologist, I'm an advocate for, capability adjusted driving planning versus age driving planning, because I think the age, the number is a myth. What we saw earlier, right? Like, you could be 80 and drive better than a 21-year-old, right? You could be 90 and drive better than a 60-year-old who's on a lot of painkillers, right? So I think it's really hard as a country to say, okay, this is the driving limit. It's really, I believe, more about the medications you're on, the ability you're at, your cognitive skill level, things like that. So I don't know the answer to that exact question. Other questions?
Just from that question, I've experienced two people that lost their two people that I was very close to that had to be taken their driver's license away, and it really changed them. It made them sad. It made them angry. It destroyed their sense of independence. So it's a very tricky thing.
Yes. And I will say that I think the generation who is in memory care today, they didn't have any of these conversations. They never talked about these things. They thought, I'm going to be independent, I'm going to be retired. And then all these things started happening, and it just blew their sense of identity, their sense of purpose away. We in this room all have the chance to now plan for that. We can say, okay, there is a day coming when my kids are going to say, you're not safe to drive. I need to learn now how to use Lyft and Uber. Even though I'm resisting it, I don't want to do it, I need to learn now. I need to know my county's transportation programs. I need to know what's available to me. I need to make some friends who are younger, who have cars. I need to pick a place to live that may not require, if I'm living half an hour from the city, maybe it's time that I move now to an area that's more walkable, or an area right next to stores that I go to, right? We can start making some of those decisions ourselves, so we can be the ones in control. We the ones that can lay down that key, because we've already got a plan on how to get everywhere I need to go. And that's actually one strategy that is recommended if you have a parent who you're looking at going, ooh, it's going to be time soon. Now's the time to start getting them used to other transportation modes, so that when the day comes when you have to give up the keys, you haven't lost your life. You've already seen, oh, I can get places. I can be the places that I need to be. I think that's most people just do the hard take the keys away from dad and then life's changed for dad. And so it's really miserable. Instead of taking the longer plan and making sure dad experiences that he can get everywhere he needs to get. Now, not every parent is willing to do those things, but we at least can do that for ourselves. I think you're out of time, so thanks for having me.
Thank you,
so much.
Benjamin.